Fear is threatening to be an economic contagion again in the Eurozone. This time, ground zero is Cyprus. People living on that tiny Mediterranean island are desperate to get their money out of the country's banks. The bank run sparked by an European Union bailout that would see the government take money from every bank account.
Some people have worked for for 20 years, for 30 years, and they have saved their money for their kids, for the future. They just come and take it like that.
They don't have the right to take the money from the pocket of the people.
If we don't accept the tax, that everyone will lose their jobs, and there will be a collapse.
People could lose as much as 10% of the money in their bank accounts in Cyprus. They lined up all weekend trying to pull their cash out of ATMs. Accounts are now frozen, and the country's banks are closed this morning. We have a couple of reports on this. It's a big story today, but let's first bring in Anne McMillan in our bureau in London. Anne, we've been seeing there, and we heard some of the angry reaction from people in Cyprus. What is the latest on the island this morning?
Well, Heather, anyone with savings in Cypriot banks in Cyprus is being told they will have to pay a one-time charge in exchange for a $13 billion bailout from the European Union and the International Monetary Fund. Now, this is because Cyprus is on the point of bankruptcy. Savers with under $135,000 in their accounts are being asked to pay 6.75% of that as a tax. Anyone with over 135K will pay 9.9%. Cypriot banks are partially responsible for the economic disaster in Cyprus, Heather. They are far too big. They have attracted a lot of foreign money with tax breaks, particularly Russian money. Lots of oligarchs store their cash in bank accounts in Cyprus.
But now the solution, taxing bank accounts, that's a really radical break from the bailouts we've seen previously in Ireland and in Portugal, in Spain and Greece. Why is the EU doing this particular approach, tacked in Cyprus?
Well, partly because Cyprus is so small. You mentioned it was a tiny island, a population of about 850 million. So it's not like a Spain or a Greece. Germany is paying most of this bailout, and it was behind the big demand for tax, the first time ever, on bank savings in this sort of bailout. Officials there say there is no way that the German government could ask its taxpayers to bail out banks, particularly when most of the money in those banks is Russian, Greek, not Cypriot. So, as I mentioned, the Cypriot banks have a lot to answer for here, because some say that they are very light on money laundering, for example. So some of that Russian money is probably not very clean. So this is where Germany is saying we've got to draw the line. You're not going to give money to a country that is actually living on this illegal money.